Well, another day, another loss for the Detroit Lions. This one was at least exciting because it gave you a ton of coaching decisions that you can question. The the biggest one is when the Lions got down 27-35 and they're in the fourth quarter. There's probably about 6 minutes left. The Lions decide that they want to go for two instead of just kick the extra point and only be down seven, where if you score again, obviously you can tie the game, or even if you want to win the game at that point, you can go for two. So let's start there because that's the type of coaching decision where it didn't end up mattering in this game at all because they didn't score that extra touchdown late. But that's the type of coaching decision that should get you fired. There's if the whole rationale and logic behind it is if we score another touchdown and kick the extra point, then we win the game. So why wouldn't you just go down seven at that point? And then if you really wanted to win the game at the end, that's when you can go for two. It's kind of a all or nothing proposition for you. We had Jim Wells here talking about the defense. Yeah, I mean, the defense is terrible. Again, they've been terrible every week. The pass defense is awful. I mean, think about this. The last 2 weeks, we've given up 6 touchdowns total to Dak Prescott and Mitchell Trubisky. And, while Trubisky only had like 170 yards, he didn't really need any more than that, obviously, to beat the Lions. And Dak is out here having a career day with 444 yards passing. Again, 3 touchdowns, no picks. The Lions were only able to sack him once. And then he added about 20 yards on the ground as well. So there's not, you're making these bad quarterbacks look fantastic, which is something that we've seen from the Lions year after year after year. And then we get Trubisky again, who tore us up. We get him on Thanksgiving. Detroit needs new ownership and starts from scratch. They do need new ownership. The only thing about the only way that you can speak to new ownership is really with your wallet or speak to the current owner to try and get new ownership, because this is of course, a money-making machine for Martha and for the Ford family in general. So from her end, it still doesn't make any sense to sell if people are, buying jerseys, right? Barry Sanders jersey. If people are buying jerseys, if people are still going to the games, they're buying the merchandise, paying for tickets, concessions, all of that, it doesn't make any sense for Martha to sell the team because she's making probably a tremendous amount of profit on it. And the only way that you can hurt the owner in that aspect is just not go to the games and stop supporting the team. And I understand that's way, easier said than done because it's your team. You love professional football, and this is the team that you want to root for. It's probably the team your parents and your grandparents rooted for. So the Lions are, deep rooted in the family, in the city that you come from. And it's not, it's way easier to just say, well, stop supporting them than it is to actually, not watch every Sunday or not, buy the merch. It's pretty easy to not go to a game. But, you still support them in other ways that obviously make the Philip Martha's piggy bank. The Lions are embarrassing. The coaching staff is clueless. The defense is atrocious. What the hell is going on? All of those things, Steven. All of those things are going on. The biggest thing is they're really bad at team building, which you're seeing now. And even Driscoll hasn't played terribly these last 2 weeks, but you got to see what happens when the Lions don't have Stafford to kind of mask some of their team building issues, because he's just been so good this year that, even when they lose or they lose close, there's kind of positives to take away. There's no positives at all from this game because you see everything just kind of crumble on down. Mako said, do you honestly think, in your opinion, that if the Lions get a new team owner, they would start winning? Nope. But you don't know that, though, because you don't know who the owner would be. You don't know who they put in place. So, yes or no, either way, most NFL teams don't start winning, so it's easier to say no on that side of the equation. But they certainly wouldn't be what the Lions have been the last handful of years, the last more than handful of years, like the last couple decades. You can't possibly be as bad as the Lions have been. So on that kind of end of the coin, if they did get new ownership, it'd be way, it'd just be way better than what you've seen just by law of averages. It literally cannot be any worse. Jim says they're going to excuse Stafford hurt rest of the year. It will save Matt Patricia's job. Nothing should save Matt Patricia's job. I know we got a lot more people hopping on since we first spoke about the 2-point conversion. That alone is a fireable offense. And then at the end of the game, when they're 4th and 26, and then they decide to punt the ball, field position. And I was talking about it with Paul, who does our Sports Carnage podcast as well. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. We did a whole thing on why the Lions should broom out Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn this past podcast, which is up on our page. So go check it out after this video if you haven't. But he made the point, and it's a great point, that at that position, at that point in the game, field position doesn't matter at all. I think the Lions were on like the 50. They're punting in hopes that they could get the ball back and then go down and win. But even on 4th and 26, there's 2 minutes and 7 seconds left, and the broadcast team was talking about, well, now you punt because you still have the 2-point conversion. The problem is that the Lions skied the punt, and then the Cowboys just let it fall. So the Lions didn't get on the ball until there was 1:59 seconds left, which completely negated the 2-minute warning that's going to give you essentially an extra timeout. And they didn't end up getting the stop on that drive anyway to even get the ball back. But those are two actually fireable coaching decisions, and they're two fireable offenses. Going for 2 when you're down 8, the logic is, hey, we want to win the game. If you score another touchdown and you're only down 1 at that point, you can try to win the game then and go for 2. Or if you like the way your team's rolling, you can take the extra point and go into overtime if you think, you guys are the better team. If you have the better team, you want that extra period of play because you expect your cream to rise to the top. And then obviously the punt on 4th down, 4th and 26, you're essentially just giving them the game. Kenneth says the defense is so predictable, 3-man rushes, inexcusable. I think they rushed a little bit more today, but it didn't work. The Cowboys were still able to get really whatever they wanted in the passing game. There's a reason that they threw the ball 46 times. So they almost threw the ball 50 times because they had great success with it. 444 yards again through the air with Dak, 3 touchdowns. The only place the Lions were really able to quote unquote stop the Cowboys is on the ground, but they still did give up the rushing touchdown to Ezekiel Elliott and would have given up the rushing touchdown the play before. I thought Zeke was in, and then they ended up calling him down. Not that it mattered because they scored on the next play. But, the only thing from this game is Darius Slay played a pretty good game, except for the pick that he had go right through his hands that Amari Cooper was obviously able to bring in. TJ Campbell, so it's time for Kaepernick. Yeah, the Lions were one of the 8 confirmed teams or something at Kaepernick's workout. The only thing with that is that, like I said, Jeff Driscoll hasn't played too bad, and I said it on last week's post game that if Stafford is out and the Lions keep losing, just lose the rest of your games. Go ahead and bench Stafford, put him on IR for the rest of the year, and I hope to God that this again 2-bit franchise doesn't bring Stafford back when the Lions are at like 3-10-1 to win the last 2 games. Obviously that would cause him a way higher injury risk than if you just let him sit these last, what are they now, 3-6-1. So if you let Stafford sit the last 6 games and have a whole offseason to repair and try and recover from the issues that are ailing his back and have been ailing his back since last year, it doesn't make any sense for me to bring Stafford back at this point unless you feel like you're going to run the table in the last 6 games, which even with Stafford going to, you're not, because with Stafford, you were still, you still had a losing record. You were 3-4-1. So out of 8 games that you played with Matthew Stafford, you only won 3 of them. Wish we could sack quarterbacks and get interceptions. It'd be nice to force turnovers. Jared, why punt? Your defense gave up 500 yards. Yeah, that's another thing is you can't justify thinking your defense is going to stop them when they've given up 500 yards and 35 points. And they haven't they forced the turnover on the first drive when they had, I think Jared Davis punched the ball out, and then he lost and then he recovered the fumble. So that got the Lions their first, their first possession. But from then on, it went downhill, sort of like Michigan State yesterday. It's after the first quarter. There was really nothing positive about what happened, and Lions got really avalanched in the second quarter. If you just look at the scoring breakdown, the Cowboys scored 21 points in the second quarter alone, and the Lions had 27 points all game. So they dug themselves into a really big hole, and weren't able to fight it. And this adds to the stat as well of the Lions having a lead in the game, and then of course not being able to pull it out. Why is Stafford out indefinitely? Is it because of his injury? So Stafford is not out indefinitely. I want them to sit. Well, he is out indefinitely. Let me rephrase that. He's just not on the IR. I want him to go on the IR, and I don't want him to play again. But yeah, it's because of his back. It's still not right. There was a report that came out today that said, either today or yesterday, where they basically said it's a 6-week injury, but that doesn't mean that Stafford will be back in 6 weeks. He could be back before or after, really just kind of depending on the situation, I guess. But, if the Lions even lose one more game, they're pretty much out of the playoff picture. I would say that they're out of the playoff picture now. But, kind of mathematically, if they ran the table, they could probably still get in. But even then, you're only at 9 wins. So if you lose one more game and then your ceiling is 8, it doesn't make any sense to bring Stafford back out on the field to play. Would have been the same outcome. The only difference is $30 million less on the field. I mean, Stafford plays this game. It's a game that they end up probably winning. Not that he can, play defense and stop the defense from giving up 35 points. But with Jeff Driscoll in there, he was able to make some things happen with his legs, but there are also a lot of plays where he had more rushing room and he could have potentially obviously extended the play, but even extended some drives, and then he just threw the ball. So it was good that he was aware of, kind of where the line of scrimmage was, but at that point, you'd hope that he would just take the running room instead of trying to throw it because, his arm is a lot less useful than his legs are. I miss Caldwell. I don't miss Caldwell. Caldwell's better than Patricia, but I still do not miss Caldwell. Craig says, I am clueless. Well, if I'm clueless and I know that you shouldn't be punting on 4th down when there's 2 minutes left in the game and you're losing, and you shouldn't be going for 2 when you're down 8 and you can make it a 7-point game, then I don't know what you would call Matt Patricia. Matty P has to go. Yeah, I mean, that's the big issue from the it's for the game, is Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn for their team building. Well, Patricia obviously for his coaching, and then Bob Quinn for his team building. These are guys that should not be here if you are serious about winning. And Martha might be serious about winning and fire them, but who knows? But it's way easier to get a new GM and a new head coach than it is to force the owner to sell the team. You couldn't stop them all day, and you're praying to stop them in the last 2 minutes. Yeah, again, it doesn't. Your defense gave up 500 yards, and then you're expecting them to hold, on 3 and out when that is all a comedy errors. 5-11-1 will happen without Stafford. 7-9 with him back in a month. Just sit him if he gets healthy. I mean, some of the other teams that are winning, which is kind of the interesting spot that the Lions find themselves in, is I think the Jets won today, and then who else won? Jets won today. The Falcons won today. So those are 2 teams that are kind of in the same boat as the Lions, right? The Falcons won today, bringing them to 3-7, and then the Jets won today, bringing them to 3-7. And the Lions are 3-6-1, so the Jets and the Falcons are still, closer to the number 1 pick than the Lions are. But if the Jets and the Falcons keep rolling, because I think the Falcons have won 2 straight games, and they look pretty dominant in both of them. If those are 2 teams that can keep on, if they can keep winning, and the Lions keep losing, then the Lions can potentially, kind of weasel their way into like a top 3 pick, which is what I want. Lost sound. Who's on the couch? Oh, there's other people that live with me are on the couch. I hope I didn't lost sound, and he couldn't stop them all day. We'll just pretend that I didn't. But like I said, the Lions have they have a chance at the top 3 pick here if some of the other teams that are losing keep winning. I don't expect them to pass Washington, who still only has 1 win right now. The Dolphins lost today, so they're 2 wins. But other than that, you really get into the point. That's kind of where the time might hurt them. But you hope that they're the only 3-win team. But if they can weasel their way into a top 3 or 4 pick, I think that'll bring a lot of optimism and a lot of hope, especially if we do get a new coaching staff and a new general manager. That would, really speed up the process. Miami and Cincy are worse. We'll have a worse record anyway. We might. So Miami already has 2 wins, and we have 3 now. And I know we have the tie, which in this scenario kind of acts like a win. But Miami still does have to play Cincinnati at the end of the year. So I'm 2 teams that we're not going to pass up or Washington and Cincinnati for, like the worst record in the league. But if Miami does end up winning, and they do beat the Bengals, that's a third win right there. So you just have to hope that they win one of the other like 5 games that they have remaining, which, I mean, they've been playing obviously better, and anything can happen in the NFL. You just got to hope we keep losing. But we can, because we're terrible. What position would you take with the number 3 pick? It depends on who's available. I hate the offensive line. But I wouldn't be – there's so many things that the Lions need. The offensive line is terrible, which is part of the reason why we can't get a run game going, even though Bo Scarborough looked pretty good today. So if he's somebody that continues to kind of develop the rest of the season, maybe the Lions look a little bit of like kind of weaning themselves off of Kerryon Johnson, who it doesn't matter how much talent you have if you can't stay on the field. And then maybe they can find their running back there. But, D-line, I think we still need help on because we can't pressure anybody. But I'd probably go like linebacker, offensive line, and then, maybe even a quarterback if Stafford's injury is really serious. And then at that point, you can sit Stafford and kind of groom, or you can sit the other guy behind Stafford and then groom him. And then, Stafford has a bounce back year next year and proves that he is healthy. Then that's a guy then Stafford is a guy that you can flip for maybe even just 1 first-round pick at that point. But if he's not your future quarterback, it doesn't really matter kind of what you get back for him, especially if you're not trying to be in win now next year. Mason's is good loss. Keep it up. I hope they do keep up the losses. Jim says Quinn won't be fired, but does he have the guts to fire Matt Patricia? No, I think it'll be a package deal. I don't think Quinn's going to get to the point where he gets a second coaching hire. Because he already, he came in and he kind of inherited Jim Caldwell and he decided to keep him. And then Matt Patricia was really his guy that he hitched, his wagon to. So if I don't see a position where, or I don't see a situation, I said both those words wrong. I don't see a scenario, that's better. I don't see a scenario where Bob Quinn is allowed to hire another head coach. If he fires Matt Patricia, I think he'll be gone with him. If we don't lose Matt, yeah, I mean that's kind of the overarching theme that we're seeing in the comments, and even that we've seen over the last couple of weeks is Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn need to leave, and yeah, that's I agree with that wholehearted. You still have some part of the fan base say no, you have to give them more time. I think those fans, not only are they minority, but they're going to start kind of getting weeded out with all that's happening both on the field and then just everything else that kind of that you hear coming throughout the week. And it just doesn't seem like it's a tight ship over there. You have you've had players come out and say this organization in more colorful or in more polite terms have basically called the organization trash and the coaching staff inept. And I think that, once you start seeing all of those kind of leaks in the boat, it's the boat's eventually going to drown, and then you have to build a new boat. So I hope we give the supplies, the materials, the wood, whatever you need to build a new boat to somebody with not carpenter, but somebody with experience that can do that, and somebody that is going to show you that there's better ways to build a boat than the Lions have been built the past couple of years. But the one thing I would say is keep an eye out on I know DSN usually puts out the rooting index, and usually that's for or like the rooting guide, and usually that's as far as the playoff picture goes is, hey, you need X, Y, and Z team to lose to bump yourself in playoff spot. But I should talk to him, and then maybe I'll even do it. Is put one out where the rooting guide, but on the opposite end, where you're rooting for teams like the Dolphins to win. You're rooting for teams like even like Washington, but more realistically, like the Dolphins, like the Jets, teams like Atlanta, to hop you in draft position, and so you'll be closer to the number 1 pick. I'm not exactly sure how to phrase that. If it's better pick, worse pick, but you want to be as close to number 1, of course, as you can. You can point out positives all you want. I didn't. The only positive I pointed out today was Darius Slay. TJ Campbell says Coach Harbaugh time plus Kaepernick. I don't think Jim Harbaugh would even consider coming to the Lions. That duo got to a Super Bowl. Why not try it? No, I think of all the teams that were at the workout, the Lions seem maybe like one of the more likely ones that would give Colin Kaepernick another shot. But he obviously wouldn't move the needle for anything that we're trying to do here. He's probably better than Jeff Driscoll. But if you're playing Jeff Driscoll and sitting Matthew Stafford, hopefully that means that you don't want to win anyway. So there's no point in bringing in a quarterback, even if you think he's giving you a better shot at winning, when that's not what you're trying to do. Do you think they go after 1 week later? Nothing changed. Still Don over Arnold. Yeah, I'm on Team Don as opposed to Team Arnold. But Arnold's a sly little weasel, man. He'll get in there with you. I'm sure there'll be a fire Patricia and Quinn article. Another one because I think they put up one last week. Do you think they'll go after ex-NFL coach that's not in the league if Matt P gets fired? I can't really think of one off the top of my head besides the ones that you hear all the time that don't come back, like Bill Cowher, a guy like Tony Dungy, who seem to every year be rumored to be like a leading candidate for a job, but they enjoy what they do now. But you might have thought that about Gruden as well, and he was able to come. It just took $100 million for Oakland to prime away. But that's really what we have for you guys today. Thank you for joining me here to talk about the Lions. Again, keep in mind, just kind of keep an eye on the NFL standings. Look for teams like the Jets. Look for a team like the Falcons. Any other teams that only have 3 wins, start rooting for them to win. Because if they win and the Lions keep losing, we'll get a better player. That can be a player that can, speed up this franchise renaissance that we always are kind of clamoring for. But that's what we have for you today. If you have not checked out myself, as well as my podcast mates on our Sports Carnage podcast that usually drops on Thursdays. Check out this week's. We talked about the Lions. We talked about Bob Quinn, Matt Patricia a little bit. Gave a little sneak peek of the rivalry game that happened yesterday where Michigan State ended up getting just absolutely bombed out by Michigan. Check our YouTube page where we do reactions to not only Michigan State, but the Pistons, the Lions as well. What else do we have going on? Twitter, Facebook. You can follow our Facebook here in the description, and that should lead you to our Twitter page, Podbean, Apple Podcast, wherever you guys like to listen for them, except for Spotify. That is where you can hear us, but give us a like, a share, subscribe, rate, review. Share with your friends. Listen to it in the car. Listen to it while you guys work out. We give you some pumped up material. But that's what we have for you guys today. Thank you for enjoying me, TJ Campbell. I do enjoy having you here with us on the post game shows as well. So thank you for that, sir. But that's what we have. Have a safe Sunday. I hope you have some amazing dinner planned because I do. So I'm really excited about that. Got to go hop in the shower and then get there. But thank you guys. You have been great. Have a good night and then a better next week.